Heather, can you do a test so I can make sure I can see your video? Heather? There you are. Hi. Awesome. There you go. Thank you. I just want to make sure I can see you.
Let's do something to my hair. You wouldn't have a pen, would you?
A pen? Yeah. I can't see that.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe a piece of paper. I could use a brown paper bag, I guess. Oh yeah, those are my dream catchers.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, there's RJ. Good evening. We have a full house. All right, roll call vote, please. Chandra?
Alderman Alder,
Here.
Alderman Flores,
Here.
Alderman Galloway,
Here.
Alderman Poston,
Here.
Alderman Schaefer,
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
We have 6 aldermen present. We have a quorum.
Okay, it's at home. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of October 19th? Motion made by Schaefer, seconded by Poston. All in favor? Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the breakfast meeting October 22nd? Galloway, Poston, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Evans. I see you're there. You go.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, where are you? Oh, that's your background. You
I'm
silly.
downtown Ozark, of course.
I love it.
Yeah.
ahead.
If you don't mind me sharing my screen, I'll go ahead and do that.
No, go right ahead.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, you pulled off the banquet very, very well under the circumstances. That was a tough order, but thank you.
Sam, I think you're going to have to let me share the screen. If she's in there. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, second, Anna. Sorry.
No worries, thanks.
Okay, it should be good.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think you should be able to see my screen really quick. We didn't have a very super heavy economic development heavy month this past month. We did kind of have a community event heavy month, as Gardner alluded to, so I'll talk about that just a little bit. I did have the opportunity to connect with Clayton Campbell, who is the representative for Southwest Missouri for Senator Josh Hawley's office. He and I had not had the chance to connect before, and he was fantastic to talk to, and passes on, of course, Senator Hawley's greetings, and wants us to, have a very open and proactive relationship. So greetings officially to City of Ozark from Senator Hawley's office, and he will continue to be in touch with us about issues that affect businesses, and if there's anything that his office can be of assistance with, transportation wise or anything like that, he wants to make himself available for that. Speaking of transportation, just as an FYI to you all, the Missouri Chamber recently released the Transportation 2030 report. They've released several different reports. Workforce 2030 is a notable one, but basically they've taken the opportunity to really take a look at where we're at and kind of make some forecasts for the next decade and where Missouri needs to be in several different areas for 2030. This is, of course, focused specifically on transportation, and it does have a section of the report that specifically addresses the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on infrastructure, especially things like supply chain and demands for space available for logistics. Especially due to, again, that rank up in e-commerce. They anticipate that there is definitely maybe even more than was predicted, the opportunity for Missouri to be a go-to state for people to have physical space for distribution as far as e-commerce goes. Again, we knew that we were really high up there, but Missouri does rank 6th nationally, I can't talk, in total length of public roads. However, if you look down to point number 4 there, as of now, our state taxes and fees per gallon of gas are really pretty far under all of our comparable states and states that border us, as you can see there. So I've included a link to that report. It's really interesting about the state of transportation and what some of that data is and what those goals are for 2030. We did hold our first class of Ozark Leads, Class 5. I know there are some on the meeting that were here in Class 1, so we are now, we've launched Class 5 and held that first class on October 11th. We did have a recap, we did hold State of the Community in a virtual format on October 27th. Want to express, again, our deepest thanks to the school district for hosting us and allowing us to use their venue to kind of broadcast from. Thank you again to City of Ozark for being willing to be there in person and be open to Q&A. Want to say thank you to Christian County for being willing to participate with us. And you can see a list there, everyone who submitted those video addresses to us. I will put the link to that video in our chat here. We do have the video recording of that presentation, and I will put that in a Zoom chat so you can all look at it. But Audrey has done a great job. She's taken each of those separate videos that we played and the video of the Zoom call recording of our discussion and put it all together into one 64-minute video that you can watch at your leisure anytime you want. So we have that on our Facebook page, and we're going to have that on our chamber website. And I think we were able to pivot pretty well to that virtual format. Unfortunately, we have gone ahead and made the decision officially to cancel the Christmas parade for this year. It's not the outcome that any of us wanted, but as of this point in the year, number one, just again, with the rising cases and increased risk in our community, what we're also seeing is that we haven't received nearly the participation from folks who want to participate in the Christmas parade, as far as, businesses or churches or families or organizations that want to, put floats in or what have you. So in consultation with our board chair, and then we had a discussion, I've had some discussions with fire department, and we had a brief discussion this morning with several of the entities, but we have made the decision to go ahead and cancel the Christmas parade at this point. What we are focusing on is, this all again was kind of a conversation from this morning, so we're still making some plans, but I do know that we are working closely. Audrey Pauls, our marketing manager, is involved with the promotions committee of the Historic River District, and our plan is going to kind of work to work together with them to try to really play up some lights and decorations and making the downtown square a really a destination for some of those Christmas activities. And then again, just kind of the same as last time as far as COVID response goes. Still, we want to be a resource for any business that is looking to go through the process of PPP loan forgiveness. And then just still continuing to encourage businesses that have made those eligible COVID expenses to submit those expenses for reimbursement for small business relief through the Christian County Commission. And we're available to be a resource for businesses who are filling out that application. So I will stop sharing my screen. I will put the link to the State of the Community video in the chat, and I will ask if anyone has any questions for me.
Right, any questions of Ms. Evans? All right, I guess not. Anna, we're disappointed about the parade, but I think we all understand.
Sure.
And so, that was another tough decision that you've been forced to make. And so I don't envy you, but thank you for doing what you do.
Sure.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for Ms. Evans? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will proceed with new bills. Mr. Poston.
Excuse me. Yes, Your Honor. I move that we place Bill 3182 on its first reading.
Motion made by Alderman Poston, seconded by Smith. Put Bill 3182 on its first reading by title only. All in favor? All right, Ms. Galloway.
An amended ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, amending the municipal code of the City of Ozark, Missouri, Chapter 405, zoning regulations by enacting one new section, 40580, neighborhood meetings.
Okay, we'll open this up for, it's a public hearing, so we'll begin with council comment. Any questions or comments from council? We've discussed this at the breakfast meeting. And Mr. Smith, why don't you just review that with us, please? Or Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give a brief introduction and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith to add anything related to the bill. Pursuant to the request of the Board of Aldermen, this bill is coming back as an amended bill. The request of the Board of Aldermen, as I understood it, were to remove situations where a single property owner would be annexed and be required to annex due to their connection to the city utilities. Therefore, after discussions with the Planning and Development Director, Mr. Smith, we decided that removal of all annexations from this neighborhood meeting bill would be appropriate because the focus would then turn to the zoning changes, planned unit developments, vacations of city right-of-way that are not initiated by the city itself, and conditional use permits, which really focuses on those changes that would impact the use of the property, which have a greater interest to the neighboring property owners. So since we've separated the annexation process, we felt like that was appropriate. And I'll turn it over to Cameron Smith for any additional comment.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily have anything additional to add, but yes, in agreement with what Ms. Calloway had said, the intent was to just go ahead and look at it collectively as removing the annexation component, knowing that at some point when the development occurs, then they'd actually go through the process of a rezoning or additional process as she identified. But other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions of either Ms. Calloway or Mr. Smith? All right, I know that there is at least one person in the conference area that wants to speak to this, so I'll let Sam bring on that person for public comment.
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Jeannie Mitfall. I live at 1324 East Warren Avenue, Ozark, Missouri. Thank you for removing the annexation issue previously. There is still some concerns I have regarding this. The definition of developer, I could not find that in the city ordinance. And it seems like every place in the neighborhood meeting notice, it refers to the person as being a developer, even though they're just making a classification change, a conditional use permit, or vacating a right-of-way. I don't think all of those people would always be a developer. And then on the neighborhood notification and meeting process, it continues to talk about the developer. And on the neighborhood meeting summary, it talks about the developer. And any notices are coming from the developer. So you might want to look at possibly changing that. And the other concern I had was these are all additional expenses for anyone. There's the added fee of mailings, the added holding cost time for delay, and then also the cost of the meeting location. And does it have to be handicap accessible as a requirement? And the last thing I have to say is during the pandemic that we're going through right now, this could be passed in 2 weeks and it would be mandatory, is the way I read the ordinance. So I don't understand when you guys aren't even meeting at City Hall, how can you have a neighborhood meeting?
Yeah. All right. Would you like to reply to any of that, Mr. Smith?
I would reply as far as the developer comment. In our ordinance, proposed ordinance, we continue to make reference to the applicant, not the developer. And so that is the purpose of this ordinance, is applying to the applicant, whether they're a developer, homeowner, or what. But at some point, the applicant, if they propose to do something, they become, in a sense, a developer or development of a property.
But on all of your forms, you refer to him as a developer. The neighborhood meeting notice, the neighborhood notification and meeting process form.
Yeah, those forms can easily be modified. Those are just reference forms. It's not actually part of the approval of the ordinance. Those are just templates that we had shown as examples of what we'd be sending out. So those could easily be modified to an applicant, to a person's name, if that's what they provided, or an engineer, depending on what that applicant is considering themselves.
All right, board, Ms. McFall has made some points that you might be interested in. I don't know if you've got any comments or questions of her, but now's the time to do it if you do. Mr. Galloway.
Well, I guess I would have a question directed either to Amanda or Cameron. So how this works, I always like to have a walkthrough on an ordinance for the way it was originally written. For annexation, anybody applying to annex would have had to have held a meeting, a public meeting before or somewhere in the process of the annexation, hosted by themselves. And we've eliminated that with this amendment. Have I got that so far correct?
Yes, that's correct. All annexations have been removed.
Legitimate point.
Okay, and so then for the individual homeowner that is seeking a change in the use of their property or conditional use, would still have to have a public hearing under the amended ordinance, or would have to have their meeting.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I guess maybe just for my purpose, well, to edify me and other people who are listening, where that concerns an individual homeowner, what kind of public issues are at stake? Why do we want to have the individual homeowner host that kind of meeting and have the public invited to it?
The remaining triggers for holding a neighborhood meeting all involve a change in the underlying use of the property. So a zoning change could mean that the homeowner wants to change their property zoning from residential to commercial because they plan on later selling their property or developing it. It could involve a conditional use that would impact the use of the property. And so the intent of this change was to eliminate those situations where an individual was compelled to annex due to a connection requirement of the city of Ozark, and instead focus on a change in the use of the property that would trigger an interest or a concern related to the neighboring properties. And I'll also defer to Cameron to add anything related to that.
Yes, the one thing I'd like to add is the other thing that we want to keep in mind or considering, and reason we left in an individual homeowner for a zoning. For example, a recent application we had seen on the north part of town where they could be doing a 40-acre tract of land for a subdivision. So they may be requesting that they rezone their property from ag to R1A or R1C. And so that would be a trigger again of kind of leading into that future development of that property and what the intentions are to help notify those neighbors. And so that was kind of the reasoning too of leaving in even the rezoning application scenario.
And then I have a follow-up. With our amendment then, if a developer wants to annex into Ozark, would they also be excluded from having to have a public hearing under this amendment?
Yes, all annexations, including those where an individual intends on developing the property, would be excluded, but they would be required to have a neighborhood meeting at that time that they ask for zoning. So as we have it under our city code now, the annexation and the zoning come forward in separate bills. They can't happen at the same meeting, so then they would essentially have a neighborhood meeting related to the zoning of the property.
And
how does
clarify something, there was reference to a public hearing. They would still be required to do the typical public hearing. This is just, they wouldn't be required to do the public neighborhood meeting.
Yeah, I meant public meeting, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
And then how does the amended ordinance compare with other municipalities in general? Are we out on our own here, or are we consistent with other municipalities? I guess that's directed to either person.
In comparison, I mean, it is a pretty similar ordinance to what Springfield has as regards to other neighboring municipalities. I don't know that anyone else would have this in place, this type of scenario. But it was an example we pulled from Springfield as a request to kind of consider providing alternative ways that the discussions could occur with the neighboring homeowners or landowners when they aren't able to discuss specific details depending on the stage of an application with the commission and board.
And then I guess my final question, is there anything in the public interest that we lose by not requiring developers to have these public meetings in the annexation process? I mean, what did those meetings bring to the table, if it were?
At this point, I don't know that necessarily would lose anything. We were just taking into consideration all the public meeting processes that we have. But since we separated out the annexation and zoning process, that zoning process would allow the opportunity to have this neighborhood meeting. There could be cases where they annex into the city and may not decide to do anything with the city for several years. And that's the case, and they would go through the neighborhood meeting process at the time they do a rezoning request.
And so just to be clear, Springfield then doesn't have these public meetings for annexation. That's to anyone.
To be honest, I'd have to look back on the annexation component. I believe they do, but I do know they do that on the conditional use zoning and PUDs. The annexation, I'd have to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. And I know this is the public hearing part of the ordinance, but I wanted to ask those questions in light of the citizen that was here and had also voiced complaint before. And I was wanting to hear her reaction to my questions and those answers.
All right, Jeannie, well, go ahead, Mr. Poston.
I had a couple of questions. One, Your Honor, if you don't mind, since Mr. Counts is on the line, if he's available to answer a question, I would like to ask him a question. If that's okay.
We'll have to see if we can.
And while you're working on that, I have a second one I can go ahead and ask to Mr. Smith or Ms. Galloway. How would we handle a public meeting right now? Would we allow a developer to do a virtual meeting?
I think that would be reasonable and probably appropriate under the circumstances related to COVID. Yes. Yes.
Does that need to be specified, or does the mayor's executive order or any other action like that cover that?
I can look and see if you would need any additional language in an order or something of that nature, but we could accommodate that.
Okay. You want to talk about? I don't know how to do it. All right, David, can you hear me?
Let me
David
clarify.
Counts.
He is chatting online, so you might have to read the chat. I know at the planning and zoning there were some difficulties with the sound, but he is chatting.
Okay. My question was, if we can do it this way, I just wondered, Mr. Counts, as a developer, what are your thoughts?
I don't know how fast David is.
Is he two fingering it in there?
Not thinking on it, I'm just saying, I don't just answer to that. And so I do want to make, if I may point out one thing to Jeannie, I don't know what documents you are looking at. You may be looking at the example documents that we had when you referred to developer, because in the actual bill that's being considered tonight, that all has been changed to the word applicant. So the word developer has been, it actually says applicant now in the bill that you're looking at.
What I was looking at was your packet that was submitted to all of the directors, and it was in that, not actually the bill itself, but the examples of the documentation going out.
Yeah, there were samples, but the actual bill they're voting on actually refers to applicant, not developer. So I just wanted to let you know.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a good point. All right, I think we should.
Your Honor, if I could ask a follow-up, Mr. Counts did respond. I guess I have a follow-up for Mr. Counts.
Please.
Is it a time issue? Is it a money issue? Why would you prefer not having this over following like Springfield's model?
The Springfield does require. Any questions for that? For David.
David's answer, Nathan, I got David's answer. He says, I think we should follow more with Nixa and Republic instead of Springfield.
Right, that was the follow-up question.
I'm still waiting then.
And I won't ask too many more. I was just, I'd like to time and money. Okay.
His answer is, it's time and money.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.
All right, any other comments, Jeannie?
The only other comment I have is just so that we don't have any conflicts at a neighborhood meeting like they did at City Council in Branson, where somebody wasn't allowed to leave the parking lot. At a neighborhood meeting, I don't want it to get out of hand like that.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Let me kind of oh yes, Heather, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about she brought up expenses. Who would have to cover the expenses of doing the meeting, of doing the paperwork?
or Ms. Callaway or Mr. Smith, that it appears to be an applicant expense, but
Yeah, the expense will be on the applicant to cover those expenses with an application fee and the mailings and preparation of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing, I was able to look up Springfield's ordinance that we're setting here, and they do not include annexation. They include the other items that we've identified.
okay. All right, I've got a comment I'd like to make, but I want to make sure everybody else has had their chance. Any other comments from council? And Sam, I don't think there's anybody else in the conference room, but if there is, why? No, okay, there's not. Bruce, Mr. Galloway?
Yes, by our next meeting, I think I would like to know how the municipalities that surround Springfield handle this issue. Nixa, Rogersville, Willard, Republic, just by way of comparison. That's my only thinking. That could be emailed to us too.
All right, well, as it stands right now, this would be on a second reading at the next meeting. So Mr. Smith, can you find out for Mr. Galloway what the other cities are doing that are surrounding us as he requested?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, a comment that I'd like to make, and I am, I see some merit in this because of my background. I see some faults in it. And so I am not, I want to make some comments, just some observations that I want you all to be thinking about in the next couple of weeks. There is an extra cost involved, an extra step. Now it can be done virtually, but that could be even more complicated during the pandemic. One of the things that I am concerned about is what Jeannie said, and I don't know if we would want Mr. Well, I don't know if we want the chief involved in this at all, but well, it probably might not be. If it's an annexation, it would, well, never mind. It would be in the city, so it would be the chief. But there is a security, Branson had a security issue with this, okay? I don't think it was a plat, but it was an issue where there was a public hearing and they were, the applicant was accosted in the parking lot and it made the news. I'm just afraid that if we require this, and if it is a rather lively meeting, which it could very well have been in the Stinger annexation down south of town, there were a lot of people upset that for a lot of reasons that were unfounded, but they were still upset. If we require the applicant to have this meeting and we don't require some sort of security or provide it, which is hey, man, I hate to go there, but it could be an issue. And I just want to make sure we think that thing through as a board, because those can be, I have been to a lot of public hearings where they have gotten out of hand and lively on annexation and platting issues. Not out of hand in a city sense to where it was dangerous, but this isn't going to be on city property. This isn't going to be a city public hearing. So I just have a concern about that, and I don't. But on the other hand, I think if those residents of, not of the city, but the neighbors of the Stinger development down on the south side of town, if they'd had a chance to voice their opinion and the Stingers had had a chance to respond, and if they had understood more what they were planning on doing, you know, there may not have been the negative reaction that there was. So those are just comments. I think there's some plus and some minus there. Just some things I want you all as a board to consider. So any other comments before we go on to the next bill? Ms. Alder.
I was concerned when we brought this concept up that it said, if I remember correctly, that no one else would be involved, just the developer, the applicant, and the neighbors. It seems to me like you need someone to be a moderator in the middle that can help the issue and flow. I see a problem in just not having anybody, just having the two sides there by themselves. and you say it's not a city meeting, but if it's required by the city, then we have a responsibility of some sort.
Well, I don't think I would deny that, but it's not a city meeting in the sense that it is a called public hearing that is you know, a posted city meeting on city property. So, but you make a point there. So I don't know what the answer is. I just wanted everybody to be aware of all of these things, because we will be voting on it 2 weeks unless something is done to keep it from coming up again. So, any other comments before we go on? Mr. Flores.
And the same thing Heather's kind of saying there. I mean, Amanda, do we have if we're requiring people to do this and stuff, are we liable for part of that? Is that something that as a city we take on that liability?
I don't believe so. Just to mirror some of Mr. Smith's comments, that this was based on a model that was utilized in Springfield, and it is done in response to a request from the board to address some unique situations we've had with development and a lot of questions that potentially could be alleviated prior to the public hearing at the Board of Alderman meetings or the planning and zoning meetings. And so while it is a required meeting, it wouldn't necessitate the city providing security or anything of that nature.
Well, Ms. Callaway hit on a point that there's a very, very good reason for doing this. It's to get a lot of the information out in the open before it goes to planning and zoning. But okay, Mr. Galloway. Can't hear you. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. I see the benefit of especially a developer having the opportunity ahead of a planning and zoning meeting and Board of Alderman meeting to outline their plans and why they're doing it. I just have this concern about requiring, I mean, I would just assume that the developer would have resources to organize, say, a Zoom meeting and put all those postings and so on. I get concerned about, you know, the just a single individual charged with that responsibility. I don't have my mind made up on it at all. I'm just taking things in. It's a really good hearing, and it's good to hear all these different viewpoints. I guess that's. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I just wonder about that for the individual as opposed to the developer, but I don't know if there's a way to distinguish between an individual and a developer in the law or not, or if that's an exercise worth taking. I guess I'll just leave that question out there between now and the next meeting.
Nathan, go ahead, Mr. Poston.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to, I had this on my notes to mention earlier and I forgot it. And that was something Mr. Galloway just said again. I would be cautious, you know, if somebody doesn't like this bill or has issues with it and there are some issues to be had, then I get that. But drawing that distinction between a business and an individual, if you're not careful, you will create a loophole where you will have individuals rezoning land and not developers, because the requirements would be different. And so they could get a zoning through without having to do this public meeting. So if you're going to do the public meetings, I would apply them universally to zonings, regardless of whether it came from an individual or an individual or a developer.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Let me make ask a question here. And once again, I know this looks like I'm trying to direct this in a certain direction, and I'm not. I'm just looking for loopholes, because I've seen a lot of public hearings in my time, and I keep thinking about two people specifically, one in Apple Creek and one in Oak Hill, that wanted to have a special use permit or variance for a bakery in their garage. And these are not developers. They're not. They're business people. But I don't know what kind of resources they would have to organize a Zoom meeting, or, you know, I don't know. But I wonder if there's any merit in classifying, going a little deeper into the people that we would require this of. We've already said it's not required by annexation, but maybe there's some others that would, maybe, and I don't know, but just think of those two people that wanted a special use permit and the burden it would put on them just to ask their neighbors if they could have a bakery in their house. So it's just a thought. There's a lot of pros to this. I see them. I wish we'd had this done on the south side of town. I wish the neighbors had had a chance to know what the intentions were of the developer. But I see some bad in it. So I don't know how to overcome those. I really don't. But we've got 2 weeks to think about it. So any other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, Mr. Flores and then Ms. Alden.
One thing that comes to mind on this is like, for instance, when it comes to architects or engineers or anything like that, they'll have a process where they RFI it or request for information, and it's something that's all done digitally and things like that. But I mean, is there a way, since really the purpose is to get information out there to the neighbors, to the people that it impacts, to let them know what the plan is or things like that? And so is there some kind of forum we can set up on these things where people and questions can be asked and then addressed in that manner? And it's not an expense, and it's not something where we have people getting together and we're also avoiding the situation where we have a heated confrontation, but it's something where people can still get information out and ask questions and get them answered. Is it maybe just the method we're going about that can be improved?
Were you asking that question of a particular person?
Yeah, just of Cameron or Amanda or anything like that. I mean, is that something we think would be possible to do versus having people get together in person, just where we have something where questions can be submitted, information can be provided, and we can avoid the in-person contact as much as possible. I don't know if that's possible or not. I'm just throwing an idea out there.
I guess my response to that would be that you would just utilize your current practice of the packet information and the mailings that are sent out related to the public hearing that's required under state law. So the neighboring properties would receive that notification and have an opportunity to review the packet and the information that's posted on our website. So that's the process we currently have, and they could certainly utilize that to gain more information.
Yeah, it is. But what I was talking about is them being able to respond to that and then ask the questions that they would have and then be able to get those answered, which I think is the purpose of the one on, like, actually meeting in person, right? So that was the thing, is if they get the packet, they see the information, they read the things, and they have questions they want to ask, but there's something where they can submit those questions and get those questions answered, and it avoids the need of having to have a meeting in that matter. So we kind of sidestep some of the concerns we have. It was just an idea. I don't know if that's something that would be possible, but it seems like it'd be able to address all the things we're trying to address and take out some of the concerns that we're trying to avoid.
We can certainly explore that option and try to come up with a proposal related to that if it's appropriate.
No problem. Just an idea. Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think this is a good discussion, and I don't know how to bring it all back into focus here, but the topic was brought forward by staff because of the issues that the city of Ozark was having with annexations and zoning, and those people getting upset about the fact that they didn't feel like that they had the opportunity to speak in advance of an action being taken. So the only example that we had anywhere near us was the city of Springfield, whereby they wanted to give people an additional opportunity to be able to make comment and possibly work out their issues with the developer or applicant in this case, as we've talked, prior to coming before an elected body or appointed body to take formal action. So the entire goal of staff bringing this to the board was really requested by the board. This is the problem. The people don't feel like they're being heard. They feel like the things are going on without their knowledge, even though it really wasn't required to post anything or go through the processes. And so staff found an example and brought this back, and we presented this because there's very limited options. And I'm going to go back to something that Alderman Alder had mentioned. And I'm also going to read something from the developer, David Towns, who's on this, because I think it was in reference to maybe what Heather said, and that is, isn't the city's duty to bring everyone together and try to help city and developer try to come to an agreement? So what I'm hearing is that if this is going to be a city requirement, then should it not be hosted by the city in a city facility? And I think that we need to ask ourselves that question, because if this is that important to the board, that the board wants to add another step for the developer and or applicant to go through, which there will have to be a fee for, because if staff is going to put this on, you have to put that in your fee study, and you have to recoup those application fees. What I'm hearing is, are we going to actually have a pre-annexation meeting or a pre-zoning meeting, which is more work for the developer, more work for the applicant, and certainly more work for the staff that we would certainly have to charge for through the application process. So I think that the intent was good, because we really went through some very tough annexation and zoning challenges in this last year. But we need to think about where we're really going and what kind of process we're creating, because it's going to create more expense, work and time for everyone. And I'm not taking a side on that. I just wanted to have the opportunity to bring that up. So,
Mr. Schaefer.
I'm not a big fan of the city government putting additional requirements on developers. I like the government to be smaller and easier, and I understand we have a desire to try to nip some of these things, early, especially because we've had some issues with public hearings in front of the board on some of these issues. But yeah, I'm not going to favor this just because it puts additional requirements on the citizens of Ozark.
Yeah, I was thinking of great. Nathan.
Yes, Your Honor, and excuse me, I can let Ms. Alder speak first if she wants before I make this motion, but I'm going to move here in a moment that we move this bill from the agenda. I don't want to kill this language indefinitely, but I do think it's maybe something that we want to continue to work on and tweak. But I don't feel like that this is ready just yet. So rather than take this to a vote in 2 weeks, I'm going to move that we remove or table this indefinitely in a moment, unless Ms. Alder wanted to speak first.
All right, hang on. But before I get a second, Ms. Alder had something to say, and then I'll get you, Jason, I promise. Heather, go ahead.
Well, Jason, I understand where you're coming from, but government is supposed to be working for the people, not against the people. And I know that may not be comfortable to you, but the whole reason to bring this up was because people were unhappy that they felt they were not being listened to or heard or given a chance to have comments about what was going to affect them. And so if you can come up with a better way to let people be in on a developer's or the applicant's decision and how that's going, because that's going to affect the people, but they don't ever get to say anything. So it's not government that you're if you vote, if you feel that we shouldn't even look at this because it's a government thing. No, it's a people thing. We're trying to represent the people that we represent. We're trying to find a way to give them a voice about something that's going to affect them before it happens. They don't feel that now. So it's not government, it's us. It's the people. If you're for the people, then you find a way to let the people understand what's going to happen to them and have a voice about it before it happens.
All right, we're having some technical difficulties here, and I cannot see the full screen.
I broke it.
Well, no, somebody did. It's probably me. But we need to get Sam back here because I
She's
don't want,
coming.
okay, don't want to, here she comes.
Just unshare Jamie's screen. Go to the top.
But Mayor, I gotta be able to
Okay.
respond, did I not? I mean,
No, I just was waiting till I could see everybody.
all right.
Okay, Heather, if we're finished, we'll let Jason continue.
Yeah, you say the people, but it's still government. It's a government ordinance. You're trying to satisfy everybody, and I believe that very often, every good idea doesn't have to become an ordinance, and very often that we try as a city government to please everybody, and then we only make it worse. And putting additional requirements in a process that's not even required by state law. So we're going above and beyond what the state law requires to try to please everybody. And I understand it's not a perfect system. And I think us spending time, administrative time and effort to make it a perfect system only makes it harder, not easier. And I am a big property right guy. And if a developer or owner of a property wants to develop it, I want them to do what is minimum to get that property developed. And it's not one where I'm trying to please every neighbor or every person on the street, but rather just make sure that the property owner has a smooth, easy way of getting that property developed in a quick and easy manner at the minimum cost to the city, which results in a minimum cost to the citizens. And no, we're not going to make everybody happy. And even if we go through this hearing process, as you saw in Branson, not everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to have additional problems because unhappy people always find ways to be unhappy. And all I'm trying to say is I want the city government to serve a minimum role, not a maximum role. And that's all I'm trying to say. And I certainly want the city to be more transparent, and I want citizens to have as much information as possible. But I don't want to make problems worse. I'd rather keep it the way it is rather than try to develop a perfect system that I don't think is attainable. That's all we're trying to say. And we're going to disagree about this.
All right, Ms. Holder, we have a motion on the floor, and I don't want to have a whole lot more. Well, go ahead, Heather, but let's try to limit this because we do have a motion on the floor that has not been seconded. Not that it will be, but go ahead, Heather.
Well, it just seems like before we bring it up to a vote, that probably having more discussion about it would be good. I certainly don't think that making it easier for the developer because we want to save him money and we don't, that's what you said, wasn't it, Jason? You want to save the developer money?
No,
No?
saving the money is the city has to go through the administrative process.
Yeah, then we charge the
More
developer.
time and money that the city has to spend to give an extra labor level of bureaucracy for a developer or property owner to do certain things. And the way it was drafted originally, it was just even a single property owner was going to have to jump through these hoops. And I think we've whittled that down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of making things harder on the developer, but that doesn't mean I'm trying to make it easier on the developer. The developer is still a citizen of the city of Ozark, and he still has the same rights as an individual.
Well, it's not trying to make it harder or easier on the developer. It's trying to inform the people and letting them have a voice. We don't want to make it, I'm not trying to make it harder on anybody. We want the people to have a voice of what's going to affect them before it happens so they know.
But to have citizens that have a voice as to the development of a neighbor's property then puts that control of that property in people's hands other than the developer and the owner. You're having your neighbors decide what's best for you.
But it affects them.
Yes.
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 So they don't have a voice. They don't. I mean, if you just say no, then.
All right, Mr. Flores.
I'm just, I think it's important to point out here that from what I'm understanding, unless I'm misunderstanding something, nothing gets decided by one of these meetings. It's just a way to transfer some information about what the person wants to annex their property to do, or what it's going to be developed, and give. It doesn't really give the people a voice either, because they're not voicing it to people who are going to. It's not going to change any decisions that are being made. It's just more of a way to transfer information. that's what I was saying in the first place. So if we're really, the only thing we can really accomplish by this, unless there's something I'm missing, is not that decisions are being made on what the development's going to do. It's just an opportunity for the developer to let the people around them know what their intentions are. And so if that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to transfer some of that information previous to coming in front of P&Z and coming in front of the Board of Aldermen, then I think that we can find ways to do that without. And so I don't think this is the way to give people a voice, and I don't think it's also a way to do something else. So I would like to minimize the step too, because I don't really know what more it'll accomplish besides giving out information. And I think if that's what we're trying to accomplish, there's got to be a better way. So I'm with Nathan on the fact that we should set this aside and figure out if there's a better way to transfer information from the developer to the individuals around the developer pre to any city meetings. And there's probably a way to make it less taxing on everybody and questions to be answered before this, it's where it's actually taking the city's time, unless I'm wrong about something.
All right, RJ, let me ask you a question. Was that, you said you were in agreement with Nathan. Was that a second to his motion, or are you just in agreement with him?
Yeah, I'll second his motion to table this, even if it's indefinitely until we figure out something else. Because I think, we got to stay focused on, from what I'm understanding, what we're trying to accomplish here. And I don't think it's going to give a voice to anybody necessarily. And I don't think it's the type of forum we want people to feel like it's their opportunity to voice their opinion necessarily. It's really just a way to transfer information. And if we can minimize the cost and impact and time that it takes to do that previous to we get to the city, then I think that we need to rethink this out and maybe come back to it at a different time with a new approach.
All right, Mr. Poston, was your motion to table, did you put a date on that, or was that?
I did not, Your Honor. I intended to table it indefinitely.
All right, is it your intention, Mr. Flores, to second that motion to table it indefinitely? Yes, okay. All right, the motion has been made by Alderman Poston and seconded by Alderman Flores to table Bill 3182 indefinitely. All in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, it passes. All opposed? Okay, there is one in opposition, and was that 10, 5 and 5? Okay. There were 5 wanting to table and 1 in opposition, so it will be tabled indefinitely. I do think this needs to be brought back in due time. I don't know when that is, but there needs to be discussion to figure this out. So it wasn't put on the agenda frivolously. It was requested by the board.
We'll get it on the breakfast meeting in the next few months.
Okay. Steve has said we'll get this on a breakfast meeting agenda in the next couple of months so we can discuss it a little better or a little more thoroughly. So that's what we'll do. All right, Bill 3184, Mr. Poston.
Yes, sir. I move that we place Bill 3184 on its first reading.
Do I hear a second or see a second? Motion made by Poston, seconded by Smith. Put Bill 3184 on its first reading. All in favor? Ms. Callaway.
An ordinance adopting updated urban service area tier maps.
Expedited? No.
Okay, council discussion. I think this was, or Mr. Smith. Yeah, why don't you explain the changes that have been made?
Yeah, following the last board meeting, staff has went back and based on some recommendations from the county and revised the tier map, tier 1, 2, and 3, primarily tier section 3. We revised it so the boundary in the southwestern corner has been updated to remove the city limits of Highlandville. So that's what you'll see on the revisions, just that revision of that tier 3 boundary at the southwestern.
Desert does not need to be.
I hope so. I'll ask.
Okay.
Mr. Parsons or Mr. Smith, I don't believe this needs to be expedited, but I'll ask you that question. Is this related to anything else that would be affected if this wasn't expedited?
At this time, no, we don't have an application for an urban service area at the moment from the county. So there's not a reason to expedite this.
Okay.
All righty, thank you. We'll hold this over to the next meeting in November. Mr. Galloway, Bill 3194.
I move that we place Bill number 3194 on its first reading by title only.
Motion made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Poston to put Bill 3194 on its first reading. All in favor? Ms. Callaway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving a developer's agreement with Kendrick Counts Land Development LLC for certain sewer improvements.
All right, any council questions on this?
Mayor, I think it needs to be explained by Jeremy.
Jeremy, please go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Parson, can you hear me? Do you have any comments, Jeremy?
Jeremy, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry. The bill in front of you tonight is a development agreement that we've been working out with Mr. Counts and Mr. Kendrick. They have been obviously developing Old World during the same time that we've been doing our data collection and our study of the master sewer plan. Mr. Counts and Mr. Kendrick has been willing to work with us, has worked with us. We've studied multiple different routes of best handling the sewer and treating the sewer. Based upon the volumes and based upon our existing infrastructure, we feel like the best method is to upgrade the Petrus lift station. The submersible pumps there can be upsized to handle more of the volume. And the big thing that we're focused on is the telemetry and that the RACO system and the communication systems, talking to the other lift stations that are downstream of that in order to adequately handle the capacities that are being generated as a part of these residential development. So they gave us a lot of time to look into this. We felt like as staff, it was in our best interest to have the developer just pay for the upgrades and for staff to install it. That gave us and our staff the opportunity to be involved in the installation and the control panels aspect of it, which anytime you can get more involved with that component, the people who are operating and maintaining the systems are usually the best person to actually install those. So I think we came up with a win-win-win given the circumstances that we had, and I want to thank Mr. Counts and Mr. Kendrick for giving us that time to study it. And I think I've got our chief wastewater operator sitting right here. I think we came up with a way that is a win for everyone involved. So.
All right, are there any questions, Mr. Parsons? All right, I believe there's a need to expedite this due to additional bills on the agenda tonight. So, Mr. Galloway?
Yes, Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3194 on its second reading by title only.
Motion made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Flores to put bill 3194 on its second reading. All in favor? All right, Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving a developer's agreement with Kendrick Counts Land Development LLC for certain sewer improvements.
Okay, you know, one thing I failed to do, but for the record, I need to do this. This is a first reading bill. It's open for public discussion. I don't believe there's anybody here to discuss it, but is there? Okay, there's not. All right, so we'll go ahead. The bill's been read for the second time. Mr. Galloway?
Your Honor, I move that we enact, bill number 3194 as ordinance number 20-070.
All right, motion made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Smith to adopt bill 3194 is ordinance 20-070. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Flores,
Aye.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Galloway,
Aye.
Alderman Smith,
Aye.
Alderman Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Poston.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we place bill 3195 on its first reading by title and short description only, please.
Motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Poston to put bill 3195 on its first reading. All in favor? Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving a developer agreement with Kendrick Counts Land Development LLC for guaranteeing completion of certain subdivision improvements.
All right, Mr. Childers. I think the explanation sheet in the back of your packet probably explains it all, but I'll give you a brief summary of that. I know you guys looked at that explanation sheet, but in short, we have 3 bills tonight that are all related to a large subdivision called Old World Estates. Phase 1 is already completed in Old World Estates, and you may or may not have realized, but over the last several months, Phase 2 construction of the infrastructure has been going forward. Old World Estate is actually a PUD, a Planned Urban Development. That Planned Urban Development Plan was modified back over a year ago. And when that happened, it changed the phases from 3 phases to 2 phases. When that phasing changed, then that moved some of the non-public improvements from one phase to another. So as phase 1, the swimming pool, the pool area was originally going to be in phase 2, and then there was going to be a 3rd phase, but then everything got scrunched into 2 phases. And so my point with this is what we want to make sure is that the neighborhood improvements of this subdivision get done for the people who have purchased homes in phase 1. And so we felt like it would be a good idea that before we move forward with the approval of the final plat, that there should be a guarantee in place. This developer's agreement is that guarantee. So and even though we don't want to escrow a private improvement or something like we might a street or a sewer or a water project, it could be public improvements, we wanted to have something in place to ensure that the neighborhood improvements would be done, and that is what the agreement with the developer is for. So in order to allow for us to move forward with phase 2, get that final platted, because everything has already been done, all the items have been checked off, which you'll see here in a minute in the bill. We wanted to have a development agreement in place to assure that for our folks that already live in phase 1. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. All right, any questions of Mr. Childers? Anyone here publicly to discuss? I don't believe so, but I need to ask. All right, apparently not. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we place Bill 3195 on its 2nd reading by title and short description only, please.
Yeah. Do I hear a second? Oh,
Mr. Galloway.
Motion made by Smith, seconded by Poston to put Bill 3195 on its 2nd reading. All in favor? Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving a developer agreement with Kendrick Counts Land Development LLC for guaranteeing completion of certain subdivision improvements.
All right, any further discussion? All right, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we adopt Bill 3195 as ordinance 20-071.
Motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt Bill 3195 as ordinance 20-071. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Galloway,
Alderman Galloway, you're there. You go.
Aye.
Alderman Poston,
Aye.
Alderman Flores,
Aye.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Smith.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Mr. Flores.
Your Honor, I make a motion to place Bill number 3196 on its 1st reading.
Motion made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Smith. Put Bill 3195 or 96 on its 1st reading. All in favor? Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to accept and enter into a contract for a land conservation partnership grant from the Missouri Department of Conservation.
Okay, Ms. Samantha, we'll take this one.
Sorry, guys, I'm gonna take my mask off so you can hear better. I'm far away from the microphone. This is the second part of the grant. We applied for one with the Federal Forestry, and we also applied for one with an MDC, Missouri Department of Conservation. We received both of them. they're kind of working in conjunction with each other. And so this is just the second part. So if you have any questions, I can answer it. But again, this is just the other half of what we applied for with the federal grant.
Any questions of Ms. Payne? Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah. Mr. Poston's got the right idea. Okay, Mr. Flores, this needs to be expedited.
I would like to expedite this for Sam if possible. So I'd like to make a motion to place Bill 3196 on its second reading by title and description only.
Motion made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Galloway to put Bill 3196 on its second reading. All in favor? Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to accept and enter into a contract for a land conservation partnership grant from the Missouri Department of Conservation.
Okay, Mr. Flores.
Your Honor, I'm gonna make a motion to adopt Bill 3196 as ordinance 20-071.
072.
Oh, sorry, 072.
All right, do I hear a second? Mr. Galloway seconded. All right, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Smith,
Aye.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Galloway,
Aye.
Alderman Poston,
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Poston.
Yes, Your Honor. I move, just an FYI, we're going to be asking to expedite this too. So if anybody's got any questions on this one, I move that we place Bill 3197 on its first reading.
Motion made by Alderman Poston, seconded by Alderman Smith to put Bill 3197 on its first reading. All in favor? Ms. Galloway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving the final plat for Old World Estates and directing the city clerk to take all steps necessary to record said plat.
All right, Cameron, you want to make comments on that, please?
Yes, this is the application for Phase 2, the final plat request for Phase 2 of Old World Estates. It's approximately 65 acres, and it's just the southern portion of the existing subdivision that's being developed now as Phase 1. Phase 1 is it's nearly built out, so the developer has made the request and completed the site or the infrastructure improvements for Phase 2. The plat has been reviewed by staff and is in compliance with city code. It also conforms to the comprehensive plan and the zoning code as well, as it being a PUD. The city staff's third-party review comments have been satisfied as well. There's adequate utility capacities to serve this development, given with the upgrades to the Petrus lift station that was discussed before. In addition, there was reference in an item on the agenda earlier about a developer's agreement for the pool construction and the buffer yards that was passed. In working with the developer, he's agreed to complete that developer's agreement so we can pursue the approval for Phase 2 final plat. At the Planning Zoning Commission, there was no opposition to this application, and it was recommended for approval at 6-0 by the Planning Zoning Commission.
Yes, Mr. Poston.
Yes, sure. I was also just going to point out to the board that this may be, Cameron, correct me if I'm wrong, this may be the last final plat that we see. Is that correct? Is there anything else out there I'm missing?
For the year.
I believe it. Every time I've said that, it seems like we have another.
Okay. Well, just
but
to refresh with the board then is we changed this process a while back so that final plats do not come through the board anymore. They go through the P&Z and then are administrative approved. So there's still a few out there perhaps floating around on the old process, and this just happens to be one of them.
Yeah, the board never saw the preliminary plat on this subdivision other than in the PUD.
All right, any council questions or comments? Mr. Galloway.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something about Mr. Counts that probably many of us knew already, may have forgotten, worth repeating. Public ought to hear it too. Mr. Counts went ahead and paved the greenway in his development, he didn't have to do that. That wasn't by agreement with the city. He did that because he thought it would be a very good amenity for people moving into Old World. I really appreciated his thinking, and I really appreciate what you've done, Mr. Counts, and I hope we have other developers like you. I hope you develop more.
Okay, any further comments? Mr. Poston.
Your Honor, I move that we place Bill 3197 on its second reading.
There's a motion made by Poston, seconded by Smith. Put Bill 3197 on its second reading. All in favor? Ms. Callaway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving the final plat for Old World Estates and directing the city clerk to take all steps necessary to record said plat.
All right, Mr. Poston.
Your Honor, I move that we adopt Bill 3197 as ordinance 20-073.
Second, please. Motion made by Poston, seconded by Galloway to put 319 or to adopt Bill 3197 as ordinance 20-073. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Galloway,
Aye.
Alderman Poston,
Aye.
Alderman Flores,
Aye.
Alderman Smith,
Aye.
Alderman Schaefer.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Okay, Mr. Poston.
Your Honor, I move that we read resolution 1950.
Motion made by Alderman Poston, seconded by Alderman Smith to read resolution 1950. All in favor? Ms. Callaway.
A resolution by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Ozark, Missouri, approving one new appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, let's see. Any questions or comments about this resolution? This seems to be a qualified candidate. I have spoken with him, and Chuck Branch has spoken with him at some length, and the recommendation comes with his blessing. Any questions about Mr. Pavlov? All right, Mr. Poston.
Your Honor, I move that we adopt resolution 1950.
All right, motion made to adopt 1950. Do I hear a second? Mr. Flores. Okay, roll call vote, please. Probably not necessary. We don't need to do a roll call vote on a resolution. Just all in favor? All right, thank you very much. Okay, second reading, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we place Bill 3192 on its second reading by title and short description only, please.
Motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Poston. Put Bill 3192 on its second and final reading. All in favor? Ms. Callaway?
An ordinance of the City of Ozark, Missouri, establishing a sewer rate.
All right, Mr. Well, any questions, or Mr. Parsons, any comments? We've discussed this. Don't want to vote on it if there are any other questions or comments. Any comments from staff? Okay, apparently not. Then Mr.
Heather's got something.
I'm sorry, who? Heather? I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
okay.
I didn't see your hand.
When would this go into effect?
Mr. Parsons?
Go into effect on January 1.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? All right, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we adopt Bill 3192 as ordinance 20-074. Am I
Motion
correct?
made by Alderman Smith and seconded by Alderman Poston to adopt Bill 3192 as ordinance 20-074. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Smith,
Aye.
Alderman Galloway,
Aye.
Alderman Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Alder,
Aye.
Alderman Poston,
Aye.
Alderman Flores,
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
All righty, that's the end of the agenda items. Mr. Childers, any comments?
I just want to bring up to the board, I'm probably going to send an email out and just check your availability. Typically, we would have our breakfast meeting on the third Thursday, which would be November 19th. We have a couple of topics. One of them is somewhat unique and may have a guest speaker come into that, but I may need to spread that out in 2 days just because of their availability. So the breakfast meeting may be a little unique in that we sort of spread it out over Wednesday, Thursday. I'm sorry for that. I just want to make sure to get you all the information. So anyways, I'll check your schedules, and I just kind of wanted to give you the heads up so that we can look to see maybe who might be on Wednesday, who might be on Thursday, kind of thing like that. So anyway, that's all I really had.
All right.
Oh, hang on.
Yes.
Nathan.
Wait a minute, I'm looking. Nathan, yes, sir.
Yes, budget. When are we going to start budget?
So what?
Budget.
Oh, well, we got to do that really soon. Staff has been working on the budgets, but we certainly would like to be ahead more further than where we are. But we'll probably not get the actual first reading of the budget to you until the first meeting in December. So we'll be talking about budgets in the next, over the month of November, so the next few weeks. So my goal is to get the first reading of the budget on the first meeting in December and go from there.
Any other questions or comments? Any comments from the board? All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Mr. Smith made the motion to adjourn, second. Mr. Poston, all in favor, say good night and wave your hand.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.